Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at 3 games to complete this first half of the season. Obviously, much more than half the season is gone, but we are headed for the All-Star break this weekend. So only 3 games to choose from tonight. In this one, we're taking a look at the Wizards in Minnesota taking on the Timberwolves. Also got another game video and our player props for you guys, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Also, head to thelines.com. Check out all the great written content we have up there. Nate's putting those player props up there for you guys now. And we have the odds finder tool you can use to make sure you're getting the best odds available to you from all those sportsbooks giving NBA bets this season. Nate, let's get into this 3-game slate and then talk about our game, Zards and T-Wolves.
Yeah, the game we're not talking about, Bucks -8 at Bulls. Haven't seen any props up yet for that. I don't know. Maybe the Bucks rest somebody before the All-Star break here. The Wizards are +2.5 at Wolves. Totals around 235. Hasn't moved much. And then the other game we look at, Clips and a Pick'em at the Suns. Total's been bet down a little bit to 223. And we would take the over there with 2 very efficient offensive teams now. That Booker's back. Here, I'm definitely leaning under, and it might be scary because if you look at the game log, the Wizards are scoring 130 and winning 6 straight over the Wolves, including 142 this season at home with Karl Anthony Towns still in the lineup with a pace of 102. And with, when the Wolves were still really struggling to find their footing with those lineups there with Gobert and Towns. And this is also an exercise in like taking a skewed recent sample size, I think. The Wizards have the best offensive rating in the league over their last 4. Who have they played? The Blazers, Pacers, Warriors, and Hornets, 4 terrible defenses. The Wolves have maybe the worst defensive rating in the league over their last 4. Who have they played? They played the Nuggets without Gobert after beating the Nuggets with Gobert. They actually beat the Jazz without Gobert, but gave up plenty of points. And then they played Ja, who went off, and Kairuka, who went off in a combined sense there. And so last 4 on the road, 128 defensive rating. Their last 4 at home before that, 106 defensive rating. And that is against very good offenses. Sacramento twice, Memphis, Golden State in there. In general, home road splits are pretty notable in terms of, very notable actually, with the defensive rating of 111 at home versus 121 on the road. Under in 6 of their last 10 home games, 18 and 14 on the season. And they're on 2 days rest here, which is actually a trend of over, 6-2 to the over in that spot. But I just don't think that the Wizards are going to be able to maintain this pace here. They have been good. They finally got their biggish 3, medium-sized 3 back in the lineup with Kuz and Beal playing, and it looked great against Portland, and Zinger has been rolling, pretty reliable playing. But I think they kind of run into a tough matchup here with Jaden McDaniels, Jalen Noel, and Gobert. Now, the runway cleared for them to just play a lot of minutes with Russell gone and with Cat still on the shelf. Mike Conley might be a bit of a defensive liability, but he's going to be matched up against basically a non-scorer, Monty Morris, with the Wizards don't really score from the point guard position. There's a bit of a revenge factor given how they've struggled against the Wiz recently. There's definitely a get-right factor after this rough road trip. And it's just, how do the Wolves win? With Gobert, they've won with defense and depending on Ant to score almost, an extremely high percentage of their points. Without D'Lo in 6 games now, their pace is much slower. The defensive rating is actually worse without Cat or D'Lo. I don't know if I'm buying into that. The offense has actually been more efficient as well. But yeah, to me, it's just that now it's like a Rudy Gobert defense and an Anthony Edwards offense, and the pace is slower. And if these games are played at a slower pace, I don't think we'll see the same ridiculous scores we saw when the Wizards and Wolves have met in recent seasons. And that's why all I'm saying is, yeah, they've scored 130 a game, but the last 3 in Minnesota, when the Wolves were playing with this crazy pace, were 107 pace. The Wolves were the biggest over team in the league at that point. Now they're one of the biggest under teams, especially when they're at home.
All fair. Yeah, I mean things are skewed by the fact that they were on the road, and that's where things are just different for them. I will say that the Zards score a bit more on the road than they do at home overall on the season. I mean, what they've been doing is obviously against bad teams, but it's also on the road. To be honest with you, I mean they play the Nets in their so that they've had two in the on the road here against the defenseless Warriors, the defenseless Trailblazers who didn't have Jeremy Grant or anybody to defend anywhere on the floor then, and Kuz went off in his game back from being out for a bit, and then the games before that, like you said, Hornets and Pacers. But then you go back to when they played on the road against the Nets at the beginning of February, just like a week and a half ago. 248 it scored in that game. Obviously against the Spurs, you don't worry about it too much when they score 127. But putting up 113 against the Pelly, I mean, I think there's reason to believe in the Zards on the road right now in this situation where you have Beal and Kuzma back, who don't cannibalize each other necessarily in any way. Like Kuz's usage rate drops a little bit, not even drops because it's still at 26.5% with Beal. It just goes up to 29.5% when Beal's not out there. So it's not like he's not shooting or getting his when Beal's out there, and the two of them combined for like 60 last game that they just played against those Blazers. So I believe in them on the road. To be honest with you, I mean, I know that the Timberwolves at home have been a lot better over the course of the last like 15 games or so. I mean, they're 9-6 overall, and then you look at what they've done at home. I mean, they held those Nuggies to 98 points. Obviously, nobody was in that game, and then against the Dubs, I guess keeping them to 114 is a decent look. And then even against the Kings, I think that's really what was the sample size that we looked at, and we went, oh, they played the Kings. They kept that game. Everyone thought that game was going to be in the 245, 250s. And both those Kings back-to-backs that were in Minnesota were held to, under 230 or what have you. So you kind of felt like, oh, wait, maybe this is a defensive team. But I would just caution against that because I do think there's still reason to believe that the team that it's not even really about necessarily being able to defend the paint. They do that well. Obviously, they have Rudy. They don't get defensive rebounds still. They were pretty much dead last for a while, but now they're 25th. Like, they still don't get boards on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know that their recent acquisitions and loss of McDaniels and company is going to be helpful for that necessarily. But, I do think that there's ways for the Wizards to score that don't require them getting the ball down low. And that is really where they continue to be vulnerable, obviously, the Timberwolves. And that's what I caution against an under in this one, just because I do think, while it's been a little bit of a contrast in terms of the T-Wolves at home and on the road, I think this is a game where the Wizards have shown they don't need the pace. They're shooting lights out with that true shooting percentage up all the way in the top 5 now as well. And with Kuz back, I think he's still, completing his tear. Obviously had a really good game against them last time as well, and filling up the stats all the way around, like 23, 8, and 9 in that game. So I think there's a Wizards team that's sharing the ball really well, high assist percentage. It would scare me to take it under. Like you said, I am the faint of heart in this case, and would not feel as good about going under 234.
No, I agree with you. I mean, these two teams scare me in terms of their variance, and I couldn't really have a strong feeling about who's going to win. I mean, the Wolves on paper just don't seem like they have the offense to hang with anybody after this move, but
yeah,
they find a way at home, and I mean, the Wizards, now that they actually have their three, I could see them putting up a lot of points and just continuing this trend of being able to exploit that Wolves defense. Although, we only have a sample size of one game with the Wolves as Rudy Gobert in the middle, and Porzingis had kind of his best game of the season in that spot. Cat, only played about 20 some odd minutes, and Gobert was a big minus in there as well. It's just like they were still really searching for answers. So, I mean, there are numbers to indicate that the Wizards go under 16-8 as road dogs here. They go under with a rest disadvantage versus 13-3 with a rest advantage, and they're only on 1 day off versus the Wolves have more time off here. So there's some stuff, but I do think it'll be kind of scary. I mean, this number is almost exactly what the Wizards are averaging in their last 7 here. And they've had Beal and Kuz in and out of the lineup in those 7. And so now they've got everybody, and there's definitely a chance both those guys get cooking and we go over. Yeah. But 3-game slate, look, this is our take for this game. And
Yeah, right.
If you don't like it, then follow us on the Clips and Suns pick.
Yeah, follow us there. I think we also feel pretty good about that, about these player props tonight as well. I will say, yeah, the three-man lineup there with Porzingis, Beal, and Kuz when they actually play together, which hasn't been very much this season. But if you look at the last week and those three are on the floor, it's an offensive rating of like 132. So you got to feel pretty good about that, with them being able to score, playing cupcake team. So we'll see if the Timberwolves bring the defense that has helped them. They're like 15-9 in their last 26, 24 games, whatever, right? Like, so they're become a much better team. They're just also much different now, and we'll see how much time it takes for them to gel if they can. So that's all the time we have for you in this one, though. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Got that Clips and Suns game up for you tonight, as well as those player props that we will look to stay super hot after another big night last night to end this week for you guys. And until we see you next, happy betting.